Vegas Video Network Studios, just steps from the Las Vegas Strip. It's Top of the Food Chain. Now your host, he's 1 part Mohawk, 2 parts attitude, and a touch of what the It's Al Mancini.
Hey, thank you so much. Welcome to Top of the Food Chain on the Vegas Video Network. I'm your host, Al Mancini, who somehow in the past week has managed to become the least controversial food writer here in Las Vegas, I think. I never thought that would happen. So we'll see how long that lasts. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, a lot of feuding going on here in Las Vegas. People at Eater.com yelling at people. And of course, John Curtas on last week talking trash about guys like Brock Radke. And today's guest, I'm today's host, Max Jacobson. So there was some trash talk happening last week. Max is here. He'll be mostly talking about food and his recent trip to London and to Paris, but he's also going to respond to John Curtas, hopefully. Hopefully I can get some controversy out of him as well today. So all of that is coming up in just a minute. But first, before we get into anything else, you got me following that light there, Jacob. I'm sorry. Before we get into anything else, I need to once again thank our great sponsors at Bread and Butter, Chris Herron and everybody at Bread and Butter. Probably the coolest bakery here in town. Great place to go for lunch, for sandwiches. Get the bagels if you're up early, or go late and get them half price or whatever they do. They always have good deals on the leftover bagels at the end of the day. And tell Chris and the crew that I sent you. Okay. In the meantime, you're on the Vegas Video Network. You can see all the programming here at vegasvideonetwork.com. Roku, YouTube, iTunes, everything is just about everywhere. Hopefully, however, you're watching live. And if you are watching live, now's the time to get into the live chat room, where you can ask any question you want of either myself or Max Jacobson. Again, topics mainly are going to be about food in Europe, but also trash talk. So if you have anything to say about any of them, please get into the chat room right now. You can email questions for future shows to food@vegasvideonetwork.com. And you can basically, what else do we have going on? Oh, phone in, 866-966-4599. Phone in questions and leave a message there, and we'll get to them on future shows. Or as I like to say, just talk dirty to us. Anyway, we will be back with Max in just a second. We've got, again, so much to say that I don't want to waste time up here at the top of the show. So let's get this message out of the way, and Max will be right here.
Traditional media believes that after about 3 minutes, you'll tune out. Most Vegas media companies think if it doesn't jiggle, you won't tune in. At the Vegas Video Network, we think both are wrong. The Vegas Video Network is the first and only live online broadcast network that specializes in insider news and expert views about Vegas. We combine great storytelling with the ability to watch when and where you want on your computer, mobile device, or television. Discover the real Las Vegas. Visit vegasvideonetwork.com.
And Max is ready in the green room, but before we get to him, I always love to share what goes on behind the scenes, behind the curtain, as you will say, here in Las Vegas on the food scene. And man, we had a get-together going on by the pool at Caesar's Palace yesterday. Unbelievable. If you're not aware, Vegas Uncorked is coming up in May, and it's this great event that brings all kinds of incredible chefs to town. You get to hang out with them. You get to have dinner with them. Very intimate events as well as really large ones. Speaking of large ones, in order to kick this off, to announce it, I guess, they basically had some of the best chefs in Vegas, some of whom flew in for it, set a world record for the most bottles of wine uncorked in 30 seconds. And as you can see, just in the front row there, you're going to see great guys, Frankie Pellegrino, you've got Julian Serrano, Hubert Keller, Michael Mina's up there, Rick Moonen, Jose Andres, Bradley Ogden, and that's just like the front or the first 2 rows. This thing went back 300 and some people, everybody with a wine screw in hand, wine key, corkscrew as you might say, that old-fashioned one. And they had 30 seconds to each uncork a bottle of wine. And within that 30 seconds, 308 of them did it. We have a new world record here in Vegas. Congrats just to everybody at Uncorked who was able to handle that. Anyway, we'll get to Max right after this. We're not doing after this. I'm sorry. We'll get to Max right now. Oh yeah. It's a little. Yeah. There's Max. Look at this. It's a slightly new format, Max. I'm a little frazzled. Second week we've done it. You know what else? How many tequila cocktails were we offered at lunch today? 6 plus a shot. It was crazy. At a noon lunch over at Jose Andres' China Poblana.
I survived. We have got more stuff on the table here.
Yeah, we've got more mezcal and tequila. Obviously, you and I both set most of those cocktails aside because we knew we had this show to do.
And I'm off to a Scotch dinner after this.
Man, we've got the rough life. Do you want any more tequila or mezcal?
Maybe a little bit later, but I wanted to just say one thing. Spawn of the Pillsbury Doughboy, Chris Herron, he really does have a great place, bread and butter. I went there the day before I left on my trip, and I had his muffaletta, which I had never had even when I reviewed it, and I got to tell you, it's better than the one at the Central Grocery in New Orleans.
Really? So, well, that's quite the compliment.
It was great. It's great. And
Absolutely.
the guy he's got really great stuff happening up there.
Yeah, he's amazing. Great place. Definitely, if you're out in Henderson, it's definitely, even if you're not in Henderson, you want to take a trip
live in
over there.
Henderson.
Yeah.
So I almost went there this morning, but I knew I was eating 2 meals, so I just had an energy bar.
That was a crazy meal at Jose Andres. It was a tequila and mezcal pairing. What did they bring out? About 9 courses of food?
Well, they brought extra food. They brought siumai and hagao and 20 vegetable fried rice that Shirley Chung invented. Jose loves that dish.
Yeah.
And I ate about half of a bowlful. I was doing fine until she brought that fried rice out.
Yeah, I'm not a big lunch person, and I'm not a big 6 cocktails at lunch person, so it was a challenge,
Well,
man.
yeah, lunch for you is breakfast, if you're up that early.
If I'm up in time for most places. Well, yeah, this was noon. I'm not usually eating by noon.
Yeah,
So.
I understand. But then you eat at 3 in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
so,
when I get up.
Right, so we're on different schedules, man.
Well, I'm on the Farmer's Almanac schedule, you know.
Yeah.
The last time I was here, I was choking. I couldn't speak. I had a flu or something.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to see you're feeling better.
Well, it's been 6 months.
And you've been traveling. Yeah, but you've been traveling the world. I mean, usually all that time in.
I have done a lot of traveling because my wife is out of town. She doesn't like me to leave her alone. The kids moved out and all that. So, but she's off with her mother somewhere in South Asia, so I'm free to move about.
Well, you just had this great trip to England and France, and that's what I want to talk to you about.
Yeah, I went on Virgin Atlantic, which was quite nice, even though they jokered me out of my complimentary upgrade to premium economy that they promised. Laura Kilroy of the sales office in Connecticut, if you're listening out there, I'm never going to ask you for anything again. You're off my list. Baby.
Richard Branson, if you're out there.
Richard Branson could care less. He'd just as soon throw me out the window.
Well, a lot of people would. Really.
Especially Richard Branson.
Probably a lot of people on that flight by the time you were done.
No, I didn't. Well, I did. Actually, something did happen. There was a very nice woman from London who happened to be Filipina sitting next to me, and she offered me a piece of chewing gum. Filipinas are great snackers. And I chewed it, and then I put it inside the plastic that they give you when they give you a blanket. It's a plastic blanket. And I don't know what this lady did, but about 4 hours later, she was wearing this vest with a black satin bag. And she said to me, "Where did you put your gum after you finished it?" And I said, "I put it inside the plastic that held my blanket." And she showed me the back of her vest, and it was covered with the gum.
Nice. Making friends
I got
over
it off.
the Atlantic.
I actually took some ice and I rubbed it. I know how to do that from my days as a waiter. And with a toothbrush and some ice, we cleaned the gum off the vest.
Well, it sounds like you had an interesting flight then.
Yeah, her name was Merle. Poor Merle. She was probably mad at me. But anyway, what I wanted to tell you about was, you have this famous oxymoron, British cuisine.
Yeah, and I haven't been to England to eat in probably 15 years.
Yeah, but the whole point is who eats English food there? It's the most multinational city in the world, London.
Right.
And you can't turn around without hearing Latvian or Burmese. And they have every kind of food. And you go, we have Fresh and Easy here, which is owned by a British company called Tesco, which is a big, low-end supermarket chain in the UK. You go into a Tesco, they have aisle after aisle of ready-made meals, and it's the most international selection you ever see. Name your favorite tagine from Morocco, your favorite Indian takeaway, your favorite Chinese dish. They've got Turkish food, you name it. You don't have to eat English food ever.
Well, that's because they were out conquering the world long before we were even established.
Yeah, but on Virgin Atlantic, they give you a bloody sausage roll for a snack, which even a cat wouldn't eat.
Well, let's talk about how the food there compares. Gastropubs are huge over here right now.
Yeah, and I've been to several, but not this trip. I went to a couple of restaurants that had Vegas ties. I went to Cut, Wolfgang Puck's Steakhouse.
In London, and he has
There's one in L.A., one in here, and he just opened one at 45 Park Lane in the Dorchester Collection. It's a very posh private hotel. And one thing I noticed about it was how terrific. I'm not trying to suck up to Wolf here, but the service people were so great. They're gracious, they're friendly, and they managed to be sort of informal in that American way, and at the same time they maintain this sort of British standard. So it's relaxing, it's friendly, they talk to you, but they're very efficient and they don't cross the boundaries. They're very aware of the boundaries.
And you feel that we're less aware of the boundaries at Cut here?
Yeah, sure. I don't think people here are trained in that way, but the Cut staff, they have a couple of Americans, a couple of French people, and then they have an international crew. I forget where my waitress came from. Some European country. She was very beautiful, of course. Right. That never hurts. No. And the food was terrific. It's really pretty close to what you get here, except that there are certain things that you get there that aren't available here. For example, British beef. I had, I think it was something like Casterbridge Farms, and it was very flavorful, a little more chewy than American beef, not as fatty, but I quite liked it. I had a New York sirloin tasting. And I had this warm veal tongue salad with marinated artichokes and shell beans.
And that's not available here? Because I thought I may have
Yes,
it.
But somehow the ingredients there seemed like they were better. They were fresher. They were more vivid. Okay. I think because it's a small country, I think the distribution system is such that the top-end restaurants get their food from the farmers or from the distributors faster. Whereas here, it may spend that extra day in a refrigerated truck and lose flavor.
And
it was just terrific.
And they have as many great farmers and distributors over there, or more than we have here.
Well, yeah, sure. And now with the with the Eurostar, which is 2 hours and a half from Paris, city center to city center, and I took it, by the way. I'll get to that. You can also get stuff from France on the PDQ. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I ate in Sketch, London, which is a very lively place for young people.
And Sketch, of course, is run by Pierre Gagnère, who runs Twist here in Las Vegas.
That's right.
Mandarin Oriental.
Yep. And Pascal Sanchez, the chef from Twist, recommended I go there. It's very inexpensive. I spent
very different than Twist.
There.
Twist is very expensive.
No, I got a little bit of a discount from the GM, but I ended up spending £50 only, which is about $78 for two. We had two main dishes and we shared an appetizer. And I had a little crepinette of lamb, 48-hour slow roasted ram. Lamb, not ram.
Ram.
That would be good too.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a roast of ram.
And some beans and some dates. It was a nice plate of food.
Well, Gagnère over here especially is known for being this kind of mad scientist, mad genius,
and
playful.
You get that even more so at Sketch, because it's for young people and it's very cutting-edge stuff. I hated the dessert, which the waiter insisted I order. It's called Malabar. And Malabar, apparently, is the name of this bubble gum that he had in France as a child and he was nostalgic for. So what they gave me was a bubble gum mousse and a bubble gum sorbet. So the waiter came over. He was a Tunisian guy, a Francophone guy called Mohammed. And he asked me, well, how I liked my sorbet, and I said, I can only think of one word in French for it. And he said, what's that? And I said, gerber, and his face fell. Gerber in French is the verb to pile up, but it's slang for throw up, like roll or lurch or something. Okay. So when I said that, he just kind of took a powder.
Well, but it is kind of cool. What's cool, though, to hear you say is because when we get that kind of food, that kind of crazy, food over here, you really do have to spend a couple $100s a head to get it. So it's kind of cool to know that, in England, where I always hear things are so expensive, you can get a taste of that kind of playfulness, craziness.
Well, no, it's not that expensive there.
No, that's what I mean. It sounds like you could get it a lot less expensive.
Well, there's a chain. There's one at the airport that I quite like called Apostrophe. It's a soup and sandwich place. And it's about $10 to eat there. And I think the food's terrific. So, even these places, which are essentially British, they're very good. And the coffee bars, maybe it's a grass is always greener syndrome. I had a flat white every day at a place called Gale's, which is just a little coffee chain, and they have great bakery, and they have delicious ham and cheese croissant, great blueberry muffins. A flat white, which is basically like halfway between a latte and a cappuccino. You can get it at Samba Latte up there in Boca Park. It was £2.50. I don't know what that is, about 4 1/4. Not cheap.
Right.
Pricier than Starbucks by about 35%. But the coffee tastes a whole hell of a lot better.
What about Indian food? I mean, you are a connoisseur of good Indian cuisine. You know probably more about Indian food than anyone I know in this city, and you're renowned for saying to people that ask you where to find a good Indian restaurant in Las Vegas, that they should take a flight to London.
Well, I didn't eat in an Indian restaurant this year. Last year I ate in probably the best one I've ever been in Berkeley Square. It's called Benares. And it was astronomically expensive, but it was great. I mean, I had an entree. It was 38 pounds for that dish, which is what, 50, 55 bucks?
Yeah.
In an Indian restaurant, 55 bucks for one dish, I mean, that's a lot of money. Come on.
Yeah.
But, it's a terrific restaurant. This year, I ate in a Spanish restaurant, and I ate a couple of meals in private homes, cooked by the butler. And they were great, too. I wish I had a butler who could cook like Tim the butler at my friend Yvonne's house.
Looks like we've got a question for you in the chat room.
Sure.
Scott, we got something going on?
Yeah, Kat wants to know, has Max ever had... Kat wants to know if I know how to turn on my mic. Apparently not. Okay. Kat wants to know, has Max ever had good tonkatsu, which apparently is Japanese deep-fried pork,
Yeah, of
here
course.
in Las Vegas?
In Las Vegas.
Yeah, I would say it's decent here at that little Japanese coffee shop there, Café du Japon,
Yeah.
with the little kisaten, just like you have in Tokyo. It's tonkatsu is how you pronounce it.
Right.
Of course, I set the bar at a very famous and famously cheap place in Tokyo, and I lived in Tokyo for 3 years. And there's a place called Tonki, which sells basically only tonkatsu,
Right.
which is a breaded pork cutlet, and they cut it into strips, and then they put that thick, it looks almost like Worcestershire sauce on it, and then you eat it on a bowl of rice with pickles. And, of course, nothing compares to that.
Right. But Café de Japon, I mean, very inexpensive, very small. It's in that same little shopping center that has Raku and Manta and all those other, great restaurants.
It's good.
Right on
And
Spring
also
Mountain.
Chiara is good. All you can eat for 29 bucks. Yeah. It's mostly sushi, but they do have tonkatsu, and you can have all the tonkatsu you can eat as part of your meal.
Scott, do we have another question, or are we moving on to France? Okay, the light was still on there. Let's talk, you went from England to France.
Yeah, I took the Eurostar, the train that goes through that channel, the so-called tunnel in the English Channel, and it's 2.5 hours from city center to city center. And, they have service on the train. You can eat. You get coffee. If you're in standard premier, they give you a meal. And if you're in business premier, which is like first class, they give you a very fancy hot meal. And the seats are plush. There's plenty of room for the bags. And I went to Paris principally to see an old friend and to eat in Alain Ducasse at the Plaza Athénée. Monsieur Ducasse graciously invited me to dinner there and said, bring a guest. However, I could feel my lower extremities rumbling in anticipation of getting a check, which would have been well in excess of $1,000, but I did not get a check.
Yeah, I mean, Alain Ducasse, one of the great 3-star Paris masters that is here in Las Vegas, but I mean, most people, I think, assume that what he does here at Mix, by the way, on top of Mandalay Bay, that what he does here is not anywhere close to being on par with what he does in Paris.
Well, I had one dish. I mean, part of it's ingredient-driven, I had one dish that was 110 euros on the cart menu. I didn't want to do a tasting menu. It's just too much. It was about the size of a Rubik's Cube. It was probably the richest, butteriest pastry you ever saw in your life. And inside were layers of cubes of truffles, cubes of foie gras that sort of exploded in your mouth, and warm guinea hen pâté. And it was they surrounded it with a black truffle coulis. And it was just the most delicious thing I've ever tasted. There used to be a dish in the early 20th century called truffe sur la cendre, where they cooked a whole truffle the size of an apple in ash, and then they wrapped it up in this pastry, and you ate it like an apple.
Wow.
I've always wanted to do that, but I think that's one of those vanishing dishes that you don't see on the planet.
Right.
This thing came close. And I tell you, it was worth a trip to France for a glutton like me just to eat this.
And so you're saying it would have been $1,000 American to do a la carte for two people. So like a tasting menu would have been ridiculously more than that.
The cart is always more expensive than the tasting menu, actually, because the dishes, when you get a tasting menu, you just get little bits of these dishes. And when you order, these chefs like to serve a menu. It makes it easier for them. When you order something a la carte, they have to fix it up in advance and make it full size, so they charge more. In the 3-star restaurants, it's always cheaper to eat the menu.
Well, how many courses are you having then?
Well, I had 2. I had a crayfish bisque, which was extraordinarily rich, and I was sorry I ordered it, delicious as it was. But, there's always a whole parade of amuse and chocolates.
I think I disagree with you. I think if we were to walk into Robuchon today and order 2 or 3. Oh, okay. You're saying in Paris it's always more expensive to eat.
Yeah.
Okay. Because over here it's definitely more expensive to eat a tasting menu.
Believe me, they want to discourage people from ordering off the menu in these restaurants, and they discourage it by inflating the price.
Okay. What else? What other types of restaurants what's going on in Paris right now, culinary-wise, and how does it compare to what we think French food is in America?
Well, I was only there for a day, but I do know that the trend in Paris are almost like these pop-up restaurants now. This whole fine dining thing is sort of at a low point, and a lot of these chefs are opening little places, and they're serving prefix menus, and you don't get a choice. You go and you eat what they're doing that day, and it's a lot more manageable for them, and the price is a lot lower, and it's a lot more popular with the people under 40.
And so we compared the highest end places to the Ducasse there to Ducasse here in Vegas. What about just the casual eateries there compared to Vegas? I mean, you think that there's a lot more cool casual stuff?
Sure. Come on, it's a food culture. You get off any metro stop and you walk down any street and you pass these traiteurs, these grocers that specialize in Chinese or Lebanese, artisan cheeses, artisan bread, candy. It's like a murderer's row of great stuff to eat. You can't walk down the street in Paris without being tempted by 15 different shops in one city block, if you're me.
Right, and here in Las Vegas, obviously not quite the same situation.
No, I mean, in Las Vegas, you can... Today, my big temptation was the new bacon cheddar stick at the 7-Eleven where I bought the Review Journal.
Did you give in to that temptation? Well, speaking of, not that, but speaking of getting to more casual food, I want to talk about what John Curtas had to say about you last week. We've got a clip. Scott, we have a clip
John
up.
Curtas.
And you called him out this week.
I know, because I think what I think is sometimes guys like Brock and Max and you. Sometimes,
don't blame me. I've never been to Leonard Skinner.
I'm painting you all with the same brush. Okay, is what I do. I think what they do is they get lazy. They go there. They get the PR schmooze, and then they end up going, hey, this meat is great. And here's what they told me. The owners went all over America looking for the best barbecue. And Chef, Joe Doblovich is, committed to great stuff. It's just a big PR blowjob. They buy it hook, line, and sinker.
So, is that fair? Do you think that you are you're blowing the PR guys here in town, or the PR ladies who are quite beautiful, many of them? So I wouldn't blame you for that. But or do you think John's just full of it?
Well, first of all, John did spend a good part of his younger life in the South, and this is his opportunity to pull rank. He's a Southerner. Ergo, he knows more about barbecue than anybody who isn't a Southerner. Okay, we'll let him have his jollies there. But, I once characterized John the way Johannes Brahms characterized Camille Saint-Saëns, a talented amateur. But I'm going to amend that. Now I'm going to characterize Curtis the way Mussolini characterize Adolf Hitler, a mad little clown.
Okay.
Except that, Hitler at least had one ball. History did record that. So, as far as John is concerned, he's an insecure little guy, but I love him.
Okay. Well, yeah, this is going to be fun going back to work on the next edition of this book. I don't know how I'm the only one staying out of the fights the past couple of weeks.
Oh, we talk shit about you behind your back.
Oh, I know that. Well, as I've always said, you put any two of the three of us, Max, John, and myself, you put any two of us in the room, we will talk shit about the third. I mean, that is just a given.
Sure, why not?
Absolutely. That's what we do to amuse ourselves.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as he did say also, and you didn't air this, that I knew nothing about barbecue.
We aired it last week, right?
Yeah,
you said you don't know anything about barbecue, and you.
Okay, and that may be true. Although I have been to every good barbecue place in the entire damn country, but that doesn't mean I absorbed any of it, of course. American food is not what I really push in terms of being my specialty. Everybody knows I'm more about Asia, and when I was at the LA Times. When I wanted to say something about French food, there were like 5 people there who'd slap me down. How dare you have an opinion about French food? You write about Japanese food.
Right.
I'm like, okay. So everybody wants to compartmentalize in our field. And John's thing is, France and barbecue and whatever else it is. And I'm sure he does know a lot about it. I really do.
You stand by your praise of Leonard Skinner barbecue?
Well, look, I have to tell you, the owner's a friend of mine, and they brought me in there before they opened, and they had the guy from Kreutz Market here in Lockhart, Texas, which is like the holy grail of barbecue. And I've been there. They have Smitty's and all these other places. And they're all very good, of course. And I don't know, the concept probably doesn't travel that well. I probably didn't get the most unbiased view of it with the barbecue master there from Texas and the owner fawning all over me and whatnot. But I like the guy, so I cut him some slack. Call me corrupt, but don't call me
ignorant.
Ignorant, yeah.
Corrupt, but never ignorant.
Well, no, sometimes I'm ignorant, but I have a pretty good handle on.
I'm just
barbecue.
trying to figure. We're in an election year, and I'm trying to figure out whether that would play as a good motto. Call me corrupt, but never ignorant.
Yeah.
Which would be or I'm ignorant, but I'm not corrupt. Which would be the Republican,
well,
and which would be the Democratic?
My brother's running for Olympia Snow's Senate seat in the state of Maine.
Really? So anybody out there in Maine? What's your brother's name?
Fred Jacobson.
Okay. I saw a light up there a second ago, Scott. Was that?
Actually, the question was, what did you actually think of the food? He answered it.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Well, I love their sausage, I have to tell you. But I didn't eat it out of a steam table, and I hate eating out of a steam table.
Right.
So when I went there, I was in the kitchen with the barbecue guy.
And that is part of what people criticize all food writers, all of us about all the time, is we don't experience food the same way that other people experience it.
Well, it's not entirely a valid criticism. In this case, it probably is. But, you can't make yourself into a master chef if you're not one. So if you go to a restaurant where the guy doesn't have the chops, like there's this one place I hate to mention because it's a small place, so I won't mention it. It got a lot of praise. And it was clear to me when I went there, the guy was way out of his depth. Menu was too ambitious. He just had no idea how to cook.
And you won't mention it?
No, I don't want to mention it.
Okay. Well, look, I think we've gotten to most of the topics we wanted to. I want to thank you so much for coming in today.
Sure, Al.
I mean, it was great to bump into you at lunch and say you want to do the show, and here you are.
Well, it's always fun.
That's what happens when there's a lot of tequila on the table, I think.
True.
And we didn't even get to any, but you've got bourbon to get to tonight?
Scotch, actually.
Scotch, sorry.
I'm not a bourbon drinker. It's just too sweet for me.
I like bourbon.
I have some at home. Come on over.
Okay, sounds good. Well, as soon as your wife comes back, she's going to have to cook that dinner we've been talking about for a while.
She'll cook it. In the meantime, when my wife gets back, the bourbon won't last very long.
I'm not going to comment on that
All
one.
right.
The last thing I need is your wife mad at us now. Anyway, I want to thank you for coming down. I want to thank everybody out there for watching. A couple things to plug. They do a thing, by the way, if you need a haircut, and you trust me to do it, St. Baldrick's Day, you know this charity for kids with cancer?
I don't trust you.
You pretty much, well, all I got to do is shave you bald. I'm going to be a celebrity. Well, calling me a celebrity is really a ridiculous phrase, but I'm going to be one of the people that shaves the heads of the volunteers. And of course, then you raise money for kids with cancer. You get your friends and your relatives to donate money if you're willing to shave your head. I'll be doing that at Rira on Saturday around noon, and I'm challenging a lot of my chef buddies to come down. I know a few of them are trying to rearrange their schedules. Anybody out there, go on my blog, which is almancini.net. You'll see the details on how to sign up for that. And, you know, I mean, there's no point in me shaving my head. I already look as ridiculous as I possibly can. So I'll be shaving other people's heads for St. Baldrick's Day on Saturday.
You could grow green hair on your ears.
Yeah, I could. Actually, that should be my punishment. I'd have to grow out the rest of my hair if I wanted to do that for charity. So anyway, that's going on Saturday. Again, we've got a book out, Eating Las Vegas, the 50 Essential Restaurants. If you like the chatter between Max, John, and myself, pick up the 2012 edition. There are twice as many vetoes this year, twice as much arguing as there was in 2011.
I have to tell you, I gave a copy to a literary critic in London, and he really enjoyed it. He thought, you know, the energy in our book was very unusual for a restaurant book. He was really impressed. And this guy's never complimented me. When he lived in L.A., he never complimented anything I ever wrote at the L.A. Times.
Well, that's good to hear. Very good to hear.
He really did like the book.
Cool. Thank you again for tuning in. I will be back next week. I'm hoping that, I know I promised you a show about shrimp this week. I'm hoping that we'll be doing that next week. But again, in my life, nothing is ever certain, so just tune in and find out. You have anything that we need to plug? Of course, read your stuff at Unica Home or Unica World?
UnicaWorld.com and in 7 Magazine.
7 Magazine, of course. Always write great stuff over there.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next week.